Are Arch Manning, Michael Taaffe, and Cole Hutson all going to play tomorrow? Starting to sound like the answer is yes. We've got the latest intel on today's episode of Locked On Longhorns. Intro.
You are Locked On Longhorns, your daily podcast on the Texas Longhorns. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Halloween. Welcome in. You are locked on to the Texas Longhorns. I'm your host, BK, Brad Kellner, Texas grad, Austin local, and longtime sports radio host here in the Lone Star State. Thank you for making Locked On Longhorns a part of your day every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Just like there's more to every player, more dedication, more attention to detail, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Stay tuned later in the episode for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. It's Mazda, move and be moved. We'll get to some keys to a Longhorn victory and a couple of nuggets from Texas basketball's open practice that I attended yesterday. But first, more good news regarding the health of some key starters for your Texas Longhorns. Arch Manning, Michael Taaffe, and Cole Hutson all practiced yesterday, and it sounds like all three of them are trending towards suiting up tomorrow morning against Vanderbilt. At his Thursday availability, Steve Sarkisian was asked specifically about Arch Manning and Michael Taaffe. He didn't give a ton, but what he gave got me a lot more confident that those guys are going to be back. Take a listen.
Both Arch and Michael practiced again today. I don't have anything beyond for Arch just because we have to follow the protocol of the days and the reps. But Arch is making good progress as well as Michael.
So there's Steve Sarkisian again yesterday saying Arch and Michael both making good progress. We'll start with Arch Manning. If you asked me on Monday to put a percentage of how likely it would be that Arch was going to play against Vanderbilt, I would have said 10%. The hit he took in Starkville and the way he looked right after the hit, combined with the almost instant reports that it was a concussion, just felt like there was no way that he'd have enough time to be cleared by Saturday. And then you get to Steve Sarkisian's Monday press conference. He tells us that Arch Manning didn't practice, and he says Matthew Caldwell is taking reps with the ones. And hey, don't forget about KJ Lacey too. We really like him. He's getting reps with the number twos right now. Just felt like every sign was pointing to Matthew Caldwell being under center on game day. And then Tuesday happens, and all of a sudden, some Texas insiders are reporting that Arch Manning is back on practice. Not doing much, but back out there. And then also on Tuesday, the picture of Arch Manning getting pulled over by APD went viral. And it's like, wait, he's driving? My first thought was, well, should he be driving just a couple of days after a concussion? And then my mind went to, wait, he's driving. That's a good sign that maybe the concussion wasn't as bad as initially feared. And then on Wednesday, Steve Sarkisian confirms that Arch Manning has been practicing at the SEC coaches conference call, right? Tuesday, it was the insiders. Wednesday, the head coach himself confirms the reports. And then again, yesterday, the clip we just played, Arch continues to practice and continues to progress. I am eating hair right now. Not ideal. If you were listening in podcast form, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. If you were to ask me right now on a Friday morning, that same percentage question for whether or not Arch Manning is going to play against Vanderbilt, I'd put it at 75% that he's out there. Manning was still listed as questionable on last night's injury report, and there will be one more that comes out tonight before tomorrow's 11 a.m. kick. So we'll see what that looks like. But again, the signs are there. It feels like Arch is more and more likely to play seemingly by the hour. And I've seen this conversation a lot, so it feels worth bringing up. If Arch Manning clears protocol and if he's given the green light by the Texas medical staff, he's playing. Like, there's no saving Manning for the next game or, hey, we've got a bye next week. Let's give him 2 weeks to get ready for that Georgia game. No, none of that. If you lose to Vandy, your season is basically over. I'm not saying don't listen to the doctors. If they say he can't play, he can't play. It's as simple as that. This is not a, hey, rub some dirt on it and get out there. No, that's not the deal. But your season is on the line. There's no rest week here. Arch Manning gives you the best chance to win a must-win game. You want him on that wall. And I don't think he'd be practicing this week if the plan wasn't to play him. They wouldn't be taking reps away from Matthew Caldwell and KJ Lacey and maybe even Trey Owens for Arch Manning just for the sake of, well, let's just give him a couple of reps so he doesn't get rusty. No, like they are practicing Arch Manning right now because they are hoping that he gets cleared and can be out there on Saturday. So that's the hope. Again, he's been at practice the last couple of days, still in the protocol, going through the 5 stages of the concussion protocol. But again, there's no rest week. If Arch Manning is cleared, we know how loyal, I should say, Steve Sarkisian is to his quarterbacks. We've seen that throughout the entirety of his tenure here in Austin. We've obviously seen that all season long with Arch Manning too. If Arch is given the green light by the doctors, number 16 will be under center for Texas, and that is a good thing for the Longhorns' chances. What about for the other 16? Michael Taaffe, he also remained questionable on last night's injury report. I don't know exactly what the surgery was, and I don't know the exact extent of that thumb injury, but I feel like this dude would literally have his thumb amputated for a chance to play in this game. Meaning that if there's a 1% chance Michael Taaffe can play, he's going to play. A lifelong Longhorn fan from the city of Austin who came back to Texas for a 5th year for a chance to win an SEC title and compete for a national championship. You're telling me in a must-win game in the final month of the regular season that he is not going to play? If this is a pain tolerance thing, this dude is going to tolerate levels of pain never seen on Fear Factor or Jackass or any of those shows. If that's what this thing is, Michael Taaffe is going to be out there. And I think it goes without saying, he is so incredibly important to this Texas defense. It is not a coincidence that the Longhorns had their worst defensive showing of the year this past Saturday in the one game that Michael Taaffe did not play. He is the captain of that defense. He is the heart and soul of that defense. He's also one of the best players in America, a preseason All-American who was leading the team in tackles before he missed last week's game. He's an elite player, also an elite communicator. His importance is vital. I can't state that enough. So love that he's been practicing. He's been wearing a green non-contact jersey, according to the insiders. I don't know how many guys are really hitting each other at this stage in the season, but obviously with a thumb injury, you don't want Michael Taaffe taking unnecessary hits to that thumb before game day. But if there's even a chance that he can suit up tomorrow, he is going to suit up tomorrow. He looked miserable on the sideline in Starkville. Obviously, he was engaged. He was being a coach on the sideline, but you could tell that dude was chomping at the bit to get out there. He was devastated that he couldn't be on the field. And again, he only has 3 home games left in his Texas career. You're competing for an SEC championship, and there is no tomorrow. If you lose tomorrow, your college football playoff dreams, your SEC championship dreams, you might as well flush them down the toilet. There ain't no rest week. Michael Taaffe has put in a lot of time into this program. He's not thinking, just give me a couple of weeks, I'll be ready for that Georgia game. No, he realizes the importance of this one. So again, doctors are doctors. If they say he can't play, he can't play. But if there's even a 1% smidge of a chance that Michael Taaffe can go, he is going to go. And then Cole Hutson, here's some good news. From an injury report standpoint, Cole Hutson, who was questionable on Wednesday night's report, was upgraded to probable last night. Hutson, of course, the Longhorns starting center. He's missed the last 2 games with the lower leg injury that he suffered in practice the week of the Kentucky game. And look, it's not like the Texas offensive line was playing great with him, but they were better with Cole Hutson at center than they were with Connor Robertson at center these last 2 weeks. Hutson is a senior who has played a ton of games in his Texas career, and you're going up against a very veteran, a very physical, and a very good Vanderbilt defensive line. You would love to have your 5 best offensive linemen out there, and Cole Hutson is one of your best 5. Again, this Texas offensive line is what it is right now, but you want all hands on deck when you're playing a top 10 team in a must-win game. So Cole Hutson has been back at practice this week. And again, he's the one guy who moved up from questionable to probable. Feels like a good sign for him being back on the field. So Texas might be as healthy as it's been since the start of SEC play. Now, Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter are both good to go. It sounds like Arch Manning, again, is on the right track. Sounds like Michael Taaffe is on the right track. Cole Hutson will be coming back. This is good news. It's a massive game. And, again, you want all hands on deck. And we'll see how today goes. It sounds like there's a good chance that the Longhorns will have just about every key starter available against the Commodores. What say you? Your thoughts on the Arch Manning discussion? Would you play him? Would you rest him? Thoughts on Michael Taaffe? Thoughts on Cole Hutson? And would love your score predictions as well for tomorrow's game against Vandy. All right, how about some keys to victory? If Texas does two things, just two things, they're going to win tomorrow. It is that simple. What are they? Well, I'll tell you next, right here on Locked On Longhorns. Oh, but first, this episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than just put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. This week's moment that moved the game forward. How about the Matthew Caldwell overtime touchdown to Emmett Mosley? I know we just spent a segment talking about Arch Manning, but props to Matthew Caldwell coming in cold off the bench in a tie game on the road in overtime. One pass attempt, a beautiful touchdown pass in the corner of the end zone to Emmett Mosley to give the Texas Longhorns that huge win in Stark Vegas. Yeah, I would say that moved the game forward, and that helped move Texas's season forward too. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning, and just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. It's Mazda. Move and be moved. All right, welcome back to Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. You know, I've spent all week trying to come up with keys for a Longhorn victory tomorrow. I thought I need about 6, 7. Why did I do that? I regretted that immediately, and I still regret it right now. There's a how do you do, fellow kids moment. I thought I'd have a laundry list of keys for this episode, but really beating Vanderbilt isn't that complex. There's just two things, one on offense and one on defense, that Texas needs to do to get a win tomorrow. And of course, a win tomorrow also means keeping your SEC title and college football playoff hopes alive. So it's pretty important to do these two things. We'll start with the Texas defense going up against the Vandy offense. Make Diego Pavia beat you. May sound insane. Make Diego Pavia the best player on the team, a guy who would be a Heisman finalist if the season ended today, the guy who's the most responsible for Vanderbilt rising from the dead as a program. You want the game to be in his hands? Are you crazy? Yes, probably to both of those questions, but hopefully you're still with me. Vanderbilt's offense isn't super explosive, but they've hit on some big plays that have had huge impacts in their wins this season. And those big plays happen because teams get so focused on defending Diego that they lose track of wide receivers and tight ends who just end up wide open. When you're focused on him in the passing game, that's what happens. When you're focused on him keeping the ball on an option or a zone read, and you ignore the running back and he ends up taking 180 yards to the house, that's what can happen. The two worst offensive games that Vanderbilt has played this year, their loss to Alabama, and then last weekend, the 17-10 home victory against Missouri last weekend. Let's take a look at both of those. In Tuscaloosa, Diego Pavia had his highest usage rate of the season. He threw it 35 times and ran it 12. Every other runner for Vandy combined for 7 carries in that game. So 35 passing attempts, 19 total carries as a team. Pavia had a dozen of them. Bama basically said, we're not going to let these other guys beat us. We're going to dare you to do it. We're going to take away all of your weapons. We're going to make you do this on our own. And what happened? Pavia's worst showing of the season. He had 2 costly red zone turnovers from trying to do too much because the game was all on him. And again, a Commodore loss. The Missouri game last week, Vandy only ran 49 offensive plays, a stunningly low number. Even for a team that plays as slowly as they do, Missouri ran more than 80. And for reference, think about the Texas-Kentucky game, how it felt like the Longhorns never had the ball. Texas had 57 offensive snaps in that game, only 49 for Vandy last week. Of those 49 plays, 19 passing attempts, 8 carries for Pavia, more than 50% usage for him. Vandy had one big play, was the 80-yard MK Young touchdown run. That was Mizzou's only real mistake defensively. Outside of that, 25 carries for 56 yards for the Doors. Junior Sherrill, their best wide receiver, 8 yards. Eli Stowers, the best tight end in the country, for my money, 42 yards on just 3 catches. Missouri, took the other guys away, and it worked. There was nothing easy for Vandy last weekend. I know they won, but they held them to 17 points, and Mizzou also lost its starting quarterback midway through the game too. So, again, the big plays that produce scoring for Vanderbilt come from Pavia throwing to wide open tight ends on play action or handing the ball off to backs who find open lanes on defenses that are worried about Pavia, that they ignore everybody else. So how do you stop those? If teams dare Pavia to beat them by throwing past coverage or running the ball himself, this Vanderbilt offense is more manageable. It's not always easy to do, I'll admit, but here's the good news. Texas has an elite defensive coordinator. Pete Kwiatkowski is really good at coming up with these bend, don't break game plans. See Kentucky 2 weeks ago. Last year against Vanderbilt, PK employed a couple of great strategies that slowed down the Doors offense. One of them was tying Jelani McDonald to Eli Stowers basically the whole game, and he always ensured that Texas had a safety over either tight end. So you had Jelani McDonald on Stowers the whole game, plus extra safety help over the top. We know how much Pavia loves throwing to his tight ends. Those are his security blankets. Texas did a great job containing those players. Whether it's McDonald again or somebody else, sticking to Pavia's number one target, I think, is a must tomorrow. And, sometimes the Longhorns played a base 3-4. Sometimes they were in a 2-4-5, but there was always at least one safety to play over the top of a tight end to make sure that they didn't leak out for a big game. Pavia against Texas last year, 143 yards passing, 4.9 yards per attempt with 2 interceptions. PK came up with a great game plan last year, and it was one of Pavia's worst games of 2024. The other trick, the other strategy, if you will, that Texas can employ, heavy use of 3-down fronts, which puts a defensive lineman in either B gap. And that makes the rules of defending the option a lot simpler because edge players become just pure contained players. You no longer have to coordinate with the linebackers to make sure, hey, you've got that gap, you've got that gap. No, if you've got that 3-down front with defensive lineman in either B gap, then again, you make the assignments way easier. The edge guys are doing the same thing pretty much on every single play. And when you look at last year's game, whenever Vandy tried an option, the edge player would maintain his contain. They basically forced the Commodores to run inside. And against Texas's interior defensive line and linebackers last year, didn't really work out well for them. Texas has a really good defensive line. They've got some really good downhill linebackers as well. Keep the edges in contain. I think that's a strategy to make life less confusing and less hectic for Texas. And again, it's something that the Longhorns did in the victory in Nashville last season. So we've talked a lot about discipline this week, and you'll hear countless other talking heads use that word when going up against what has been a very efficient Vandy offense. It is crucial to be disciplined. Vanderbilt doesn't have the athletes that Texas does. They know that, so they'll try to win with scheme. They'll try to disguise. They'll try to confuse as much as possible. Again, Pete Kwiatkowski last year came up with a game plan to make life as easy as possible on his defense. Don't worry about all of what they're doing, all of the motion, all of the misdirection, all of the disguise. Just do this. Just do this thing. This is your job. Just do that, and we'll be fine. And it worked. If you can play simple assignment football and just do your job against the other 10 and force, Pavia to be a hero every time he has the ball in his hands, I think you've got a great shot. All right, spent too much time on that one, but let's get to the Longhorn offense real quick, going up against the Lionel Richie defense. Start fast. It's not a bad plan in any game, but with the way this Vandy team likes to play, it is paramount. They love to run the football. They love to control the clock. They love to limit your possessions that you get on offense. So starting fast, aka playing with the lead, doesn't necessarily guarantee you a win, but the easiest way to stop the other team from running and controlling the game is to put points on the scoreboard and pressure them to try to go faster. They don't want to go faster. They want to go slower. They want you, Texas fan, attending this game at DKR, to look up at the scoreboard and see that there's 2 minutes left in the third quarter, and you're wondering, well, how the hell do we get here? That's what they want. And this kind of ties into key number one. If you play with the lead, you can turn Vanderbilt more one-dimensional. Well, how do you actually get a lead? Well, one thing that I don't think Texas has done a good enough job of this year is utilizing their speed on the outside. I keep hearing people say that this team doesn't have playmakers, and I don't buy that. Is there a Xavier Worthy on this team? No, there's not. But do they have enough speed and skill on the outside to beat Vanderbilt? Yeah, they do. Texas just hasn't done a good enough job at getting their playmakers the ball in space. Some of that is just Arch Manning misfires. Some of that is due to Sark not going to the well enough. So getting the ball to guys like Ryan Wingo and DeAndre Moore in space, that needs to be a big part of the game plan, especially if Matthew Caldwell is your starting quarterback, right? I think it should be the case either way, but short, quick throws to your best playmakers, letting them get to work after the catch against a Vandy defense that at times has struggled with tackling this year, especially in the secondary. RPOs, quick throws to those guys, that feels like a solid game plan. We saw Ryan Wingo turn a few nothing plays into monster gains last week. Let's see it again. And yes, you don't need me to say it, but establishing a running game would be really nice. This has the feel of an OU game to me. Not from a rivalry standpoint or an atmosphere standpoint. No one's getting a golden hat tomorrow. But in terms of physicality, like all of the conversations we have during Red River Week each year about, the more physical team is going to win, and hey, you need to run the ball and you need to stop their run, those things. That is what this game feels like to me. If somehow, some way, Trey Wisner and CJ Baxter can get you to or even close to the 136 rushing yards you had against the Sooners, you're going to win this football game. Maybe not by 17, but you'll win. If you hold Vandy to less than 50 rushing yards like you did OU, maybe you will win by 17, if not more. So I realize I just rambled about those 2 keys for a long time, and it probably made it sound like there were 10 keys instead of 2, but make Diego beat you and play with the lead. You do that, we'll be going into the second bye week at 7-2 with perhaps a little confidence going into Georgia, perhaps. All right, one segment to go on a Friday edition of Locked On Longhorns. I was at the Texas Basketball Open practice yesterday. A couple of nuggets from what I saw as the season gets rolling next Tuesday. That's coming up next right here on Locked On Longhorns. But first, shout out to our friends at DoorDash. It is almost the weekend. Time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order. These players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Longhorns, Arch Manning delivered in a big way. The fourth quarter comeback, forcing overtime. Yeah, he was instrumental to Texas overcoming that 17-point fourth quarter deficit to get that win. We've seen some clutch plays from Arch Manning as of late. We hope that streak continues tomorrow against Vanderbilt. Just like Arch Manning delivered for the Longhorns, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season long, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through 11/18. And also, the NBA is back. There's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game or just want to ride the hot hand during the game, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score the next bucket to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into same game parlays for a shot at even bigger payouts. It keeps every game more exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So take advantage today. Head to FanDuel.com and sign up to play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, final segment, Friday edition, Locked On Longhorns, your team every day. I am dying in this wig, but we are going to power through some observations from the open window of Texas basketball's open practice they had yesterday afternoon. It was open to the media for about 30 minutes. I was out there yesterday. Of course, the season gets going on Tuesday. Texas taking on Duke in Charlotte. It's a road game. I know it's not a Cameron Indoor, but it is a road game, and obviously a brutal way to start the Sean Miller era here in Austin. But hey, on the other hand, a great opportunity for a tremendous start to the Sean Miller era. But a couple of observations that I have. Hopefully y'all don't kill me for talking some Texas basketball. But man, this is a big team. You can tell that size was a priority for Sean Miller when putting together this roster. And it was a huge problem for Texas last year. No pun intended. You had Caden Shedrick, who was far from a fan favorite, but he was like your only kind of reliable big. After that, not really anything you could count on. So if Shedrick got in foul trouble, heck, he got banged up a couple of different times last year. If he wasn't on the floor, Texas was getting bullied down low by pretty much every team that they played in the SEC. Texas now has size at pretty much every position. I mean, Tremont Mark is back for another year. He's going to be running the point at times. He's 6'5". You brought in 2 7-footers from the portal with Vocatitis and Traore. Good to see both of those guys out there, by the way. They've been battling injuries. They've missed, or I should say they did miss, the 2 scrimmages that Texas has had in the last few weeks, but those guys were back at practice. And Sean Miller told us yesterday that it sounds like they will be available for the season opener. You've got Dalen Swain out of the portal as well, who followed Sean Miller from Xavier. He's big. He is long on the wing. Nick Cody has some size off the bench. Cam Heide too. This is a big team that should do a lot better from a physicality standpoint this season than they did last year. Another thing, this team's going to be active on both ends. Some of the drills that they were running, dude, I would have been passed out 2 minutes in. And guys didn't look tired. Like nobody was hunched over. Nobody was begging for water. Again, we got to see 30 minutes. I'm sure the practice was probably like 2 hours, but those guys made it look like it was nothing, which means they've been doing that kind of stuff for a while, and they've built up some tolerance. A lot of running drills, a lot of defensive drills, a lot of rebounding drills, just nonstop movement for what we saw from this team, and it was really, really good to see. I mentioned the news with the injuries to Lucina Traore and Matas Vocatitis, both guys back at practice. Sounds like Vocatitis is a little bit ahead of Traore, but still, both guys expected to play on Tuesday. By the way, real quick, while we're on basketball, a quick recruiting nugget. Yesterday, Texas picked up their second commitment for the class of 2026. 4-star shooting guard Joe Sterling from California picked the Longhorns, 6'4", 180, ranked just outside of the top 100 players in the country at number 104. If you gave me one word to describe him, it would be sharpshooter. He's made more than 250 three-pointers in his 3 years of high school ball, shooting at a 44% clip. Had a great summer as well. Texas came in, offered pretty late. Didn't have a ton of high major offers, which might not thrill y'all, but hey, it gave Texas a better chance of landing him. And I like shooters. You can't have enough shooters. I think any Texas basketball fan will tell you that with some of the struggles the Longhorns have had from three-point land in recent years. So you look at the class of 2026, both pickups for Sean Miller in this cycle, both great shooters. Bo Ogden from right here in Austin, another 4-star, a top 40 player in the country, and now Sterling as well. The Horns going after a few 5-stars in this class, including Austin Gooseby. Yes, Gooseby, the younger brother of Trevor Gooseby, the Longhorn starting left tackle. Texas in a good spot for him, but Duke and BYU and a few other schools going after him too. So there you go. Real quick basketball updates. Again, season starts on Tuesday. We'll talk a little bit more about that Duke game next week, but wanted to give you all a couple of minor updates with this team as we sit just 4 days away from the season opener. All right, that'll do it for today's show. If you made it this far looking at me today, number one, God bless you. Number two, please remember to like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, all of those great things. Really do appreciate y'all's continued support of Locked On Longhorns. For your next listen, check out Locked On Bets with my man Lee Sterling and Kevin Rogers. They are your one-stop shop for all of your sports betting needs. Find Locked On Bets on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Post-game, right after the game goes final tomorrow, win or lose. We'll be talking about it right here on Locked On Longhorns, but hopefully we're celebrating a Texas win, and hopefully we're going into the bye week with some confidence. All right, that'll do it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, horns up, mic's off. We'll see y'all soon. This is Locked On Longhorns.